Hi guys, welcome back to another video, second one today. So today I'm going to be talking about Gregory of Tours' history of the Franks. Now, Gregory of the Tours is another bishop writing in the 7th century, and he is focused on the Merovingian dynasty, and in fact doesn't cover the whole Merovingian dynasty because he dies before the Carolingians take over from the Merovingian dynasty. So Gregory begins his history, like so many of the histories in the Middle Ages, by talking about like the Old Testament and stuff, and the start of the church and so on. Like it's kind of annoying that so many histories of the Middle Ages written in the Middle Ages start that way, because we know that history. We don't we don't need to. If we want to know that history, we'll read the Bible or we'll read Eusebius or whatever. So Gregory begins his history proper with Clovis, King Clovis, who is the first Christian king of the Franks. So Clovis the First converts to Christianity, and that's where his history begins. And I believe that's where the Merovingian dynasty begins as well. And Gregory's history goes on to Chilperic the First. And Chilperic was king 586 or 585 or something like that. So what kind of history is it? It's a medieval history, so, but it's more dependable than, for instance, Geoffrey's history that we just talked about, Geoffrey of Monmouth. It's more faithful because Gregory of Tours is a part of the history he's talking about. So at the time, Tours was a very important city in the Frankish Empire, the Frankish Kingdom, and as the Bishop of Tours, he's quite an important bishop, and I think that's one of the most interesting parts of the history, for as formulaic as it is in so many ways, is when Gregory includes himself in the history, because as an important bishop in the time of an important city, he had lots of dealings with the kings and queens of the time. What kind of history is it? It's very much a history of typical dynastic squabbling and fighting between kings and queens, and important noblemen, important royalty, like, say, for instance, kings and nephews and uncles and nieces and grandmothers and mothers of the kings, right? So they're all, typical of royal history. It's all this fighting to gain power and all that stuff that, it's the same in any history, like the history of the Romans or whatever. Or the history that we just covered, the history of the kings of Britain. So it's got its charms. I think if you haven't read very much medieval history or medieval historians, you might find it interesting, for the additional reason that the faith life of Gregory the Tours, his religion, how he understands the world, how he understands the dynamics of history, sort of like Geoffrey of Monmouth, how history basically rises and falls because of God's will. So God's favor because people are being good, or God's curse because they're being bad, or whatever. So Gregory is, in our sense of the word, very superstitious. He talks a lot about various celestial phenomena, and in my readings of astronomy, of astronomy and astronomic history, I've never I've never, I don't think I've ever heard any references to Gregory the Tour's comments about various celestial phenomena. So I guess you would take them to be like comets and so on. He refers to things like that, and he also refers to pestilences, weird weird natural phenomena, which he would have read about from the ancient historians, like Pliny's Natural History or whatever, talking about, or Augustine, talking about weird things that happen in nature, like, whatever, like weird crops growing, pestilences, weird sheep, weird whatever occurring, snakes appearing, whatever, which were common, a common part of the historians that Gregory of Tours would have read. Again, people like Pliny or Augustine or anybody like that. And it's interesting. It's, for someone like me who's read a lot of medieval stuff, I get bored by these references. But if you have never read anything like this before, you might find it interesting. The kings and queens and all that stuff that Gregory of Tours discusses aren't that remarkable. Sure, it's interesting that Clovis converted to Christianity, but most of the kings are unremarkable. Really, most interesting, in my opinion, most interesting French history happens with the dynasty that follows the Merovingians, and that is, of course, the Carolingians, which begin with basically Charles Martel. That's where they get their name of Carolingians, and his son Pepin the First, and of course a few kings down the road, the most famous king, Charlemagne, who's probably, I don't know, Pepin's grandchild or something, or great grandson or something like that. Anyway, so that's when the Frankish Empire becomes basically, the Frankish kingdom becomes the whatever Holy Roman Empire, and its complex history and all that begins. So as political history, it's not that interesting because, again, these aren't like the most remarkable kings in the world. And it's really just, do you want a picture of the daily life of the upper nobility in the 6th century, then 6th, 7th century, then this is the book for you. And that's about it. Really. If you haven't read much medieval stuff, then sure, read it. I found Geoffrey of Monmouth's history, I guess, more interesting, even though it's less historically dependable. So Gregory's history is dependable for the most part as history, as a record of the Merovingian Kings, of this part of the Merovingian dynasty. But it's, I suppose, less interesting as literature than Geoffrey of Monmouth's history of the Kings of Britain. Anyway, I suppose read it. It's long. And if you haven't have a good taste of medieval history or medieval culture, then yeah, read it. That's all I got to say today. Thanks very much, guys, and I hope you're having a great day, and I'll try to be back soon with more reviews. Bye.